crew. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone, and happy Easter Sunday. Well, it was real fun because for some reason the intro wasn't playing. So if I was making some funny faces while it wasn't working, I hope you enjoyed those funny faces because that's what I do when things don't work right. I just make faces. So anyway, I hope you guys are having a fabulous Sunday and a fabulous weekend so far. And I'm super excited to be here on Easter Sunday. I hope all of you had a wonderful time with family and friends. I was actually fortunate enough to have my older son here with me. So we spent the day together and it was amazing. So I also have just gotten back from a 4-day retreat, which was really life-changing. It's called the Abundance Retreat. It was here in San Diego. So I was there for about 4 days and then got back and all the catching up. We all know how that is. So again, for those of you who have been watching the show, welcome back to Gloves Off. And I really appreciate you checking in with us every single week. And then for those of you who are new, I'm excited to welcome you to the show. Basically, Gloves Off is a show about people who show their authenticity, show up in the world doing amazing things, and we talk about what they do for work and business. But then there's a point in the show that we just take our gloves off and get down to the nitty-gritty of who they are, things that they've experienced in their life journey. So today, my guest is Yarona Boster. I'm going to get into a little bit more about her shortly. But first, I'd like to introduce my sponsor, Elevated CPA, who is, they do taxes and they help you with all your accounting. And I have to tell you, it's so funny because accountants are supposed to be really, really boring, right? And that isn't always true. It's funny how we have these assumptions about how people are supposed to be or how certain professions are supposed to be. And, Doug Benefield is actually going to be on the show next week, and you'll get to meet him. But I just want to basically say that it has been a very different experience than I've ever experienced in my life with an accountant. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. As I mentioned, Yarona, I met her last year at a conference that we were both speaking at, and probably was one of the best parts of that conference, to be honest with you. So there's always something to gain from every experience in our lives. She has had 17 years of experience in early childhood development, psychology. She's a life coach. She is a TEDx speaker. She is an international best-selling author. She's an international speaker. Actually, one of the cool things that she did recently was she actually spoke in India. So we can dive into that. But without further ado, here is Yarona. Hello, welcome to Gloves Off, Yarona. How are you today?
I am wonderful today. It's been a marvelous day here in
Oh, wonderful.
sunny, somewhat sunny New Jersey.
And I was so glad you got to join us on the show because at least it wasn't Easter Sunday for you.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. It was Easter Sunday for us, but we had a nice little meal earlier. And the one thing about having a partner like my husband is that we balance each other out and support each other really well. So he knew that this was something I wanted to do, and you and I had talked about it, and I said, "Well, can I do it on that night? Because normally tonight is my night to put our son down for bed." And he said, "All right, do it."
That's so great. And it's so important to have a partner that supports you because we need that time. We need some autonomy. We need some time to do the things that we want to do. And one of the things that really impressed me was, you really juggle a lot, it's one thing to juggle a lot when you've got older kids. And, it's a whole different thing to juggle a lot when you've got younger kids because they just require more out of you. And I would say that it was probably one of the things that drew me to you because I think in that way we're so alike that we like to be involved in so many different things. But so tell me, what fuels your passion to do all these different things?
I want to make sure that I have a positive impact in the world before I go. And as somebody who has had a lot of firsthand experience in death and the dying experience, I really understand the finite nature of life. So for me, spending time with my family is always going to be a top priority, but it's not my only it's not the only priority I have. And I hate saying that because the truth is that when we look at the word priority, it's actually the origins of it mean that there's only one. However, as we humans have evolved, we've changed that. But when I think about it, I use the word priority to say, yes, one thing is important at one time. And I think that's really vital. When my son and my husband are with me and I'm spending time with them, they are my priority in that moment.
Mhm.
And I am fully engaged and present with them. When I am working, I am full on in work mode. When I am this, that, all the things I'm doing, I give my full attention to that thing. And I think we struggle as a society to do that these days. We're
Uh,
so distracted.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And what a great point to just really deliver so early on in our conversation. If we can just engage fully into whatever we're doing at that moment, we can have multiple priorities, so to say. We don't have to just have one, but we just have a priority at any given time. So right now we're doing the show and this is your priority and you're focused on this and nothing else, meaning you're not thinking about what you got to do after, what you got to do, whatever, you're not distracted.
Exactly. I think one of the misunderstandings about prioritizing is people think that they have to be multitasking all at one time simultaneously. But our brains are actually not made for that. They are built to focus on one thing at one time. Now, they can focus on that one thing in almost nanoseconds, but the
Mhm.
truth is, there's no ability to do a multitude of things at one time without messing those things up and not giving it our full focus, concentration, and honestly, our full intention. I think we, especially people who juggle having kids, having a family, having full time work, maybe having outside work things, they're like, I can't, I'm so stressed, I'm so stressed. And one of the things I've come to really understand is that we're as stressed as we want to be if we keep ourselves constantly distracted. My phone is off. My doors are locked so that my son, my 6-year-old, does not suddenly walk in. My husband's got him taken care of, and I'm not worried.
Mhm.
And I'm not paying attention to that. I'm here with you, focused here
Mhm.
now. I'm not thinking about, oh, who's messaging me or what things I have to do next. And I think one of the biggest struggles as a parent is we feel guilty if when we're with our family, we're not actively engaged with them. One of the things we do though is we dive deeper into those distractions. So we're like, oh, I just got to answer this message, just got to answer this message. But is that true? Unless you're a doctor and you're on call for an emergency overnight, so that's a
Right.
different story. And then your brain is actually waiting for the call. So you're
Of
still
course.
not in that mode. And I think we do our families a disservice when we're constantly like, let me just get this message. Let me just take care of this, take care of this. But when we make,
100%.
those deliberate times for the things we need to do, then once we're done with that time, we
Mhm.
shift gears, we stop on that, and we go to the next thing, and we give it our full attention.
It's interesting because you say that multitasking. So I would say that there are days that I really feel like doing a lot of things at once because that's just the place my mind is in. But I do notice also that I cannot do that 5 days out of the week. I mean, I may be able to do that 1 day out of the week where or I don't even wanna say a day. Maybe I do it for a few hours, but then I will see the consequences of stress when I do it. So I may do things like that, but I'll limit it to an hour or 2, try to really bust out a lot of, like, mundane things that I can multitask because there's something I'm excited to do that I'm excited to deep dive into that requires all my concentration. So I think it's really about understanding how much of that we can do or really should do. I find if I'm distracted and multitasking a lot, I'm wiped. So I know exactly how long I can do it, and then I stop because the distractions are big too. I always, at this point in my life, I keep my phone on silent all the time. I never let that thing ring. So, I have obviously favorites on my phone. If my kids need me, their calls will come through, but I don't want to hear that thing dinging all the time or making noise all the time. It drives me crazy. It actually distracts me. It changes my focus. People don't realize that one change in the world, it could really change the quality of your life in a big way, right?
So much so. And actually, this is something really, really important. When our device is our primary focus, and we're always waiting for something to come through, whether it's a message, a social media notification, a piece of news, things like that, and we're always having to constantly check it, what we're not doing is being present.
Hmm.
And with my field, specifically in the world of parenting, that is the worst thing that we can both do to our children, do to ourselves, and as an example for our children to grow into. It is
100%.
the most unhealthy place we can go because one of the reasons why, in this day and age, so many children and so many people, so many adults are feeling completely disconnected from one another is because of the ever present device.
Mhm. It's huge. And we don't realize what an impact it plays on it because maybe the person who's in the device is not understanding how they're shutting the other people out, and really nothing is that important, you know? I really have made a big effort. Normally, if nobody's here, I don't have to worry about it, but I do it when I want. But even so, I have to say even when I'm by myself, I find that it affects me in a negative way if I am really on my phone too much. So it's something that I've had to constantly reevaluate for myself. What is okay? What's not okay? There's things I enjoy watching, there's things I enjoy, being in communication with. But I've also learned to realize that there's a certain amount of time that feels good to me. And after that, it's time to stop.
Yeah. I have two awesome analogies I'd like to use. The first I'll use is okay, let's say you're an adult and let's say you're having dinner with your family and the
Mhm.
doorbell rings and you're like, oh, I'll be right back. Let me go get it. And you answer the door and it's nobody. Okay. Close the door, go back to the table. Doorbell rings again. You run over to the door. Oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't realize this was my neighbor giving me something. Okay. Close the door. You're about to turn around and again it rings. And suddenly you see a line of people lined up to ring your doorbell. What does that usually produce in people?
Stress
An anxiety, right?
and
Stress,
anxiety,
anxiety.
definitely.
That is actually a very similar response mechanism in the brain of a fully developed adult. This
Mm.
constant need to like, oh my gosh, there's another notification, another notification. I have never, and I have spoken at this point to thousands of people, and I have never heard one person say, I'm so always looking forward to those notifications. I'm always eager to get another one, get another one. Now,
No.
let's take on a child's developing brain. And we do understand that the brain isn't fully developed until mid to late 20s. So let's even knock that down to like 20. Okay. In a developing brain, one of the things we now have enough science to prove is that when you hand a child a handheld device, whether that's a tablet or a phone, you hit the same receptors in the brain as drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same dopamine hit response. It's not anything more than that. It's the same component of receptors. It's not a deep serotonin response. It's actually a dopamine hit, an immediate gratification hit. And so I like to tell parents, listen, if you're not planning on opening the liquor cabinet for your 6-year-old, please stop handing them your device willy-nilly when you're out shopping, when you're here, when you're there. And the amount of times I see that happening is, quite frankly, really disheartening at times.
So
Because all I want
basically,
to do is, ask them.
we want the audience to know, don't open the liquor cabinet for your 6-year-old, right?
Nope.
Not okay. But
I
I
do
would
want to make
actually
sure
love
that,
to hear,
yeah.
for those of you who are watching, we'd love to get some comments. I'll keep an eye out for some comments if you guys have any questions, any feedback, because I think this is a real charged topic. People,
Right.
sometimes it's easier to give that child a phone, because they need a lot of attention. They need a lot of things. So sometimes it's like, oh, I see it all the time at restaurants. They're like, well, I
Mhm.
don't know what else to do with them. He won't stay quiet. So, this is what I choose to do. And I get it. If it's not all the time, you got to do what you got to do. But it's just a matter of how much these things are happening.
I would posit a couple of other things because I hear always regular responses saying, but people will look at me funny if my child is screaming or making noise. I don't want to be judged.
Mhm,
My child is bored. Let me tell you something. Boredom is actually a beautiful thing. Boredom
mhm,
breeds ingenuity and creativity and imagination. If you go to a restaurant, you know what you can bring? You can bring crayons, you can bring toys, you can bring games. The amount of times we take our son to a restaurant now and we never pull out a phone. We never pull out a tablet. We have toys, we have games, and we even play games. You and I were both born, and I apologize in advance if I you know, I'm not going to tell people your age, but I'm going to date
well,
myself
I'm
and say,
35. Everybody knows that. I
oh,
mean,
okay, all right.
sometimes I tell my 25-year-old son that just tell everybody you're adopted so they don't have to worry about doing the math. No, it's okay. I don't care. I'm
Well,
okay with my age. But yeah, we grew up in a time where these things didn't exist.
what do people think our parents did?
Mhm.
What do they think our parents did? Here's the thing. You know what we used to do when I was a kid growing up? And I do this with my son now too. You take the straw, you're at a restaurant, you take the straw, you take the little thing, and you make little triangles with your fingers, and you guys try to like kick it back and forth with one another. And then you have conversations with your children. And this is something so important because it's relevant for babies too. You have
Mhm.
to have conversations with your babies. You have to tell them, look at this, look at that person, look at, oh, this is table, this is chair. You have to help them learn their surroundings and their environment, not disconnect from their surroundings and environment. And that is what we do when we put a device in front of them.
Well, unfortunately, I feel like so many of us are disconnected already. So we're just modeling that same behavior. So I really, I think number one, we need to be more present, and then we need to model that behavior for our children. And it's really interesting because when I first met you, you gave a talk on grief, and it was just so captivating. And then since then, I know that you went to India. So I actually want to talk a little bit about that because
Sure.
that was interesting to me because I don't even know if we really had a deep dive conversation into what that was like for you. I mean, we did speak about it some. So, just for the audience, you got invited to
Mhm.
I forget what town in India, and you had quite a big audience, and I remember the story, but I want you to tell it to our audience because I think it's a very enjoyable story.
It was Maharashtra, India, in this Amravati. It was actually at an ashram to celebrate oh my goodness, my brain is completely dropping right at the moment. Um, Rashtrasant Tukraji Maharaj, and he was a saint who was sainted a number of years back. I think it was in the 80s was when he passed away.
Mhm.
But he used to say, humanity is my God. And one of the things he was really drawn to was trying to uplift humanity, humankind. He was actually one of the first, like, he was all about female, women power empowerment and all these things in a time frame of the 40s and the 50s, when it wasn't, in the 60s, when it was, like, especially not in India in certain places. But yeah, he became sainted. I was invited there on a humanitarian award as somebody who does a lot of work in the humanitarian fields. And I got to speak in front of 750,000 people live. And it
You're
was
crazy.
absolutely magnificent. But here's the thing. It was so magnificent, not because of the 750,000 people. What was magnificent about it was the energy, the emotionality, the openness of the people, willing to receive us, willing to be open to what we had to say, willing to hear us out and cheer us on too. And also just so happy to have other people who were interested in them, interested in their saints, interested in learning more about their culture, because there's not a lot of that. In fact, I'm pretty sure I was one of the only white faces in the crowd, literally,
And
other than some people from
and
my group. That was it. you know.
and probably a lot of those people didn't even speak English, so there had to be a
Yeah.
translator to translate it into their language. Do you happen to know what language they spoke?
Ooh, I'm gonna butcher the name of it. Something
Malayalam?
with an M. Nope, it's something with an M, and I'm
Okay,
blanking on that too. But I
okay.
will try to remember that at some
I
point.
thought you did great pronouncing the other names. To be honest, I don't even know if I could have pronounced those as well as you did. So that's very good. But yeah, it's really interesting because the times that I've been to India, even though I am Indian, they know I'm an American. So it's a
Mm.
very interesting phenomenon when an Indian who lives in India, I'm sorry, lives in America. I was like, wait a minute, that's not me. When an Indian who lives in America goes to India, they
Yeah,
can definitely identify that you're not like them. We just don't
yeah,
actually look like them. But they get really excited when people from America come because
yeah.
I went there when I was married and my ex-husband was Italian. So he was obviously very fair skinned. And, they were like, where are you from? They're just very excited.
Yeah, yeah, and the area I went to was definitely, I mean, I think it was about 3 hours outside of Nagpur, and so I had to make a number of different flights over, and it was quite an adventure. But I think the thing I really primarily took away from it was the beauty of a people who were very well-intentioned, and, just trying to live in harmony with the area that they lived in. And I think that was really lovely for me. And the kids that I met were just awesome people. Just awesome people, just trying to do much better for their own families and their communities. And I think if we could cultivate more children who are focused here in America on community good,
Hmm.
it would be such a beautiful, beautiful world.
Right. Well, they grow up so different than what we do. They don't have a lot of things. So the things we have are almost really unimaginable to them. I mean, it's just such a different environment. I know it took me a while to get used to it when I went there. Just it was almost hard to see how much they didn't have compared to how much we do. Just some things that we take for granted, running water, just a clean bathroom to go to. It's just not that easy to find. I mean, India is a hard country to go visit. It's beautiful. There's such an amazing culture. The people are amazing. It's really an amazing experience,
And
but you have to almost be prepared for what you're going to see.
that's true. And for what you're going to eat. My stomach does not like spicy food.
Yes, yes. Now that's not the case for me. It's funny. Here it is, Easter Sunday, and we went to eat. I love doing non-traditional things for just certain holidays. I don't know why. It's just our thing. But I mean, we grew up in a home where we're half Italian, half Indian, and then so we just have always done. Sometimes we do things that are traditional, and sometimes we don't. And obviously, today it was one of those days that we didn't and had Indian food. But yes, it's a lot of spice to get used to, and again, in India, it's spicier than it is here in America. So it's not easy to get used to that.
Yeah, my version of asking them for mild was like,
Oh, they don't know. They
I
don't even know what that is. They're like,
don't
what
know
are you
what that is.
saying?
You know,
What are
I'm
you
like,
even
no spice,
saying?
no spice.
They're like, sorry, we don't really do it that way. I don't know what you're talking about.
Talking about. I learned very quickly. I did.
Yeah.
And I will say it's funny that you say the non-traditional meals because even as we went over to my mother-in-law's for Easter, because I'm Jewish and my husband is not, and we went over
Mhm.
to my mother-in-law's and we actually had food from Jersey Kebab. We had gyro platters and we're like, I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
Well, it's I think it's great at certain times of your life to be very traditional, and I've done it, but I have to tell you, I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm really interested in spending quality time, and I'm not much of a listen, I like to cook when I wanna cook, but I don't like it when it's preordained that I've gotta do X, Y, and Z for a certain event, and then I'm like, "I don't wanna do all that," and, so I don't want to, and what happens is I get cranky. So nobody really wants the cranky version of me. They'd really rather not have whatever I was gonna make. They're like, "Really? Do you want to" I get questions like this, "Do you want to do that?" "No, not really." "Well, then please don't because you're really cranky."
Yep. Oh, I hear you. I'm
Yeah.
learning to dial back the crank, but I will say that it's good. My husband and I are primarily similar mindset when it comes to food, so we're good with that. And he's been doing some intermittent fasting, and I've been, so we all have. It's funny because I do know that there are a lot of families and a lot of households where it's like, and this is how I grew up. You cook one meal, everybody eats it, or you go hungry. And that's fine, but my son is practically a vegetarian. In fact,
Mm.
he wouldn't eat the kebab. He was having a salad. Like that's his, version of real good food. And
And
I
most people
I
have trouble getting their kids to eat the vegetables, and yours wants to eat vegetables, so that's fabulous.
yeah, he chooses the vegetables all the time over anything else. And
Well, that's wonderful.
and it's beautiful. And so I've learned, and this is something I would say to all parents. You have to learn what works for your family and what works uniquely for you guys. That said, there are a lot of foundational components to parenting that a lot of people are unaware of because biology may give us the ability to have children, but nobody teaches us how to be a parent.
No.
And
And
specifically as
there's no right or wrong way. I think there are some premises we should stick to, but one thing
yes.
I felt was really hard for me when I was raising my children is, I mean, I was a full-time surgeon, so really the things that the other moms could do, I really just didn't have the time or the capability of doing. And yet I felt like I had certain parameters that I needed to fit into to be a quote unquote good mom. Now, I don't agree with any of those things. I'm more in the realm of let's be good parents. Let's have children that are well adjusted in the world, children that are kind, children that are decent. Honestly, intelligence wasn't as important to me as it was to all the other parents. I just wanted my kids to be kind human beings. I wanted them to be moral human beings. And you know what? I raised that and times two. And I actually got the intelligence, but I wonder if it's because I didn't focus on it, and I didn't focus on it because my parents pushed only that. Like, that was the sign of excelling as a human being was massive intelligence, really, really good grades, straight A's. If you weren't those things, you were a failure. And that was the last thing I wanted to show my children. So I was like, I don't care if you get straight A's. I don't, you do what you want. And the funny thing was they try even harder to get good grades. And I go, I don't even know why you care. I don't really care one way or the other. So
But there
funny,
is a
right?
reason for that. Here's the thing. Cognition, where a lot of people think we're of as intelligence, cognition develops. It develops regardless. But what is a learned skill, and truthfully, I mean cognition is a bit of a learned developmental skill, but what's actually a true learned skill that's not born you're not born innately with is social emotional intelligence. You're
Mm,
not actually born with that. You are born with certain predispositions to certain personality traits and behavioral traits and even some certain mental health components,
mhm,
but you're not actually born with social emotional development. That is a
mm,
learned piece that's in your environment. So it's interesting that parents have a tendency to focus on intellect and learning your ABCs and your one, two, threes because they want you to function in the external world, but what they are lacking is the development of their internal world. And here's something that I want people to understand, and I will connect this back to social media and devices and things like that. When we build a world where everything is the external side, what we're actually building in our children is called image esteem. And instead of building their self-esteem. Now, self-esteem is what you think of yourself, how you feel about yourself, and the value you place on what you think of yourself.
Mhm.
Image esteem, it's not what other people think of you. It's your perception of what others think of you and the value you place on it. So when we're cultivating image esteem through social media likes and, how many followers you have and stuff like that. Look, I don't have a big social media following. And the truth is, I don't care. I don't. I'm sorry if that offends people, but the fact is, I'd rather cultivate this because this is a part of the core human need: connection, a
Mhm.
real connection, not a social media connection, a real human to human interaction and connection where you get to know someone on a much deeper level, where you can start to read their facial expressions and their
Mhm.
gestures and the unspoken signals. Because here's the thing: 70 to 90% of all communication is nonverbal.
It's so much higher than people
It,
think.
yeah,
It really is. It's the reason that we can have a conversation with somebody and we know they're disengaged. We know what they're thinking. We know what they're feeling, and they didn't tell us.
yes,
And people don't realize how impactful that really is. And you know what they always say? Like, they always say, don't, make sure people's words and actions are aligned. I mean, that's why I watch people more for their nonverbal cues and how I'm feeling around them, much more than what they say.
yeah. That's why my parenting book that's going to be coming out this year is called Unspoken Signals, because
Mhm.
it's all about the unspoken signals we as parents show to our children, whether we realize it consciously or not. There's a lot that we do in front of them that they pick up on. I have so many parents who are like, isn't it funny how my child does this? And that's something I do. And I never really noticed it until I saw it in my child. And I didn't actively teach them this. They just started doing it. They'll pick up your mannerisms, they'll pick up this, and they'll pick up your engagement with your device over them all the time. And what that tells
Mhm.
them is the device is always more important than another human being. What
Mhm.
does that do? It disconnects them from other humans. What's one core human need? If you listen to Ryan and Dici, they were psychiatrists who wrote, no, psychologists, who wrote a theory called the self-determination theory. There are three core human needs, and this is in my book, but connection, competency, and control. Now, control is all about autonomy.
Mhm.
Competency is the ability to do for oneself, to do anything, even if you're, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you are build developmental skills for something, meaning, like, let's say you want to be a trash collector and you do
Mhm.
it really well, that's competency, and that competency breeds, fosters your self-esteem.
Mhm.
Connection, human to human connection, real connections, actually are necessary on a survival mechanism level. This is something that was bred into us from the ages ago. We human beings need connection, need human to human connection in order to survive. But we need it more than to survive, we need it to thrive. And autonomy is, well, the ability to control your own desires, your own, what you want for your own life. And I teach this to parents all the time, because here's the thing: your children are not your mini me. They're not your shadow. They're going to do their own thing in life. And that means that when you
And they
make
shouldn't
expectations,
and they shouldn't be your best friend.
oh gosh, no, they should
Oh,
not be
every
your.
time I hear that, I mean, I try not to cringe. I mean, it is that is probably the most offensive statement I hear.
Oh, oh, I've heard many more offensive statements, but
Well, yeah,
that's a
that's
perfect
the one that
example.
for some reason bothers me, and I have to say that my kids and I are very close
Yeah,
now, but they're adults, it's different.
yeah,
I've never said my children were my best friend when and first of all, that's so it's so not good on so many levels to me.
yes.
It removes I feel like it removes their own autonomy to find their own friends. It I don't know, I almost feel like it's a need of the parent more
Oh yeah.
than the need of a child. Like every time that I hear that and like we're best friends and the daughter's 13 and the mother is 40 and I think is that good for her or does that just feel like it's good for you? And I think we have to check ourselves as parents.
It's not healthy, because
No.
unfortunately, you're not teaching them boundaries.
Hmm.
You're not teaching them what boundaries are and what boundaries are not. You're not teaching them, and there are a number of different kinds of boundaries in life. I actually have a theory I call the 4 boundaries of living. And it really goes to an integral part of where we come into boundary play. We
Hmm.
have our individual boundaries, our own lines that we do not dare allow others to cross, nor do we want to cross ourselves. More importantly, it's actually the boundaries we set for ourselves. I
Hmm.
am I will I'm going to be fully honest here. I will tell people all this all the time. I'm terrible with my own personal boundaries. I will
Ooh.
cross my own personal boundaries all the
Well,
time.
and
And it
now we're going to
really,
have to hear how. We're going to have,
okay.
because this is gloves off. I was going
This
to
is
get
thumbs
to
up.
these
I
kind
will
of
tell you
questions.
that, but I will very
So,
quickly explain that then there are interpersonal boundaries, and those are the boundaries you establish with the people in your lives, the intimate relationships you craft, your
mhm,
friends, your family, your partners, and so on. And those boundaries, often there's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of fluidity there, but they
mhm,
need to be clearly spoken. You cannot make the assumption your partner knows your boundaries, nor can you assume you know what theirs are. You have
mhm.
to have a constant conversation about that, because also boundaries change and shift over time.
Oh, of
All
course.
boundaries do. Then we've got our societal boundaries, and those are how we interact in a society. Unfortunately, in this day and age, I see a lot of that getting crushed and oblivion, like just going to a total oblivion all the time. And that's not a good thing, because that actually devolves into chaos, which is not healthy for any given society. And then we've got our final boundaries, and that is our boundary of living. We
Mm,
are finite creatures. We are here for, or at least we are here in this body for a finite period of time, right? Whatever your belief system is, we are here in this particular body for a finite period of time. We have a finite number of breaths. We don't know when those breaths will end. And unfortunately, we fail to teach that to our children. And therefore, and especially in this day and age, our children don't know how to live once that final link of that physical boundary is severed between you and
mhm.
them. And one of the questions I ask every single parent all the time: what's the one thing you want to know at the end of your life? As a parent, what's the one thing you want to know at the end of your life? If you can imagine yourself laying in your deathbed, what's the one thing you want to know? And it almost always boils down to, I just want to know my kids are going to be okay without me. And that okay, it's not usually about financial security and things like that, or it might be that, but most importantly, are they going to be able to emotionally handle my death and carry on with their life and live happily after I'm gone? So I tell every single parent I meet, you got to then start with that end goal in mind.
Mhm.
And that means you have to have the tough conversations. And there are ways to do that. It's not a break it in the moment thing. You do it very slowly. There are various foundational ways to do so, so that they understand that you're building them to that place where they will understand that they will eventually lose you.
It totally makes sense, and I think those are really great points to bring up. But I do wanna know how you have violated your own personal boundaries, because I believe that when it comes to boundaries, I do believe that most of us are good in some areas, not so good in
Mhm.
other areas, and so tell us how you violate your own boundaries.
I am naturally driven to love helping people.
Mhm,
And when I go into that, I go into that with full intention and heart. And I have run infertility support groups now for many years at this point. I've done a lot of federal and state advocacy work for legislation on infertility and family building. I'm now, right now, my son and I are volunteering for 2 different things. One is for an animal shelter and a hospice care. He's the youngest hospice volunteer they've ever had. And we do a lot of this work. I do a lot of that outside myself. I also do a lot of mentoring for a lot of people.
mhm,
And one of the things I fail to do is limit those things. And I
mhm.
spread myself really thin when it comes to that. And I don't say, Rona, it's time to let go of that. You don't have the time to do that. And I just finally said, okay, it's time to pass the baton to other infertility support, to other people who want to run the group. And I did. I found some really wonderful wonderful human beings who are, they're actually graduates, we call them, of my group, who went on to have their children and resolve their infertility issues.
So where do you think that stems from? I feel like there's always a little bit of a deep-seated reason why we have trouble with some things and not others. So for me, that's not my issue. I'm very good with my personal boundaries. I'm very good at saying enough's enough, make sure I have lots of self-care and alone time. I'm so good with that. But where I have trouble is in relationships,
Mm.
and not really all relationships, romantic relationships, which finally I've really gotten a hold of that and gotten that to be really good. But that's been more of a struggle for me. So what would you say? Do you have any idea where that stems from, or?
Oh yeah, definitely. Growing up, I grew up in a small town, and we're a large Jewish population, not super orthodoxy religious, but just a really large Jewish population. And one of the things about Jews is that charity is like a huge thing, and giving back and helping others and helping is just something I was always told, like, that's the most important thing you can do in your life, is help others, help others. And then here's the other thing. When I was most vulnerable and least helped, I realized that the thing I most wished for in those moments was for somebody else to see that and help me.
Mm,
And those things coalesce together to pull me into a direction of saying, you know what, you got to help others. You got to help others. Even when I started in the infertility advocacy work, we hadn't had our son yet. I had actually had, I had a 10-year cycle of infertility issues, with an ectopic pregnancy, an emergency surgery that started it, 3 miscarriages in between both of my parents' deaths. And I took care of both of them until their last breaths. And also my niece is passing away. And then one of my miscarriages, when I had put my mom on hospice, but I took care of her in her home. And then after she passed, we went to try to do IVF, and we lost both $20,000 and 4 abnormal embryos. And at that point, I realized, ooh, I need something. So I went and I found this infertility support group, and they were talking about doing this. So I went just for the support group, but then I found out that they were going to Washington. This was pre-COVID and all that. And they were going to Washington and doing this advocacy where you get to actually meet with the federal legislators and talk about different legislation. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And the thing that kept going through my brain is, when you're helpless to help yourself, help others.
mm.
Because I was helpless to control my infertility struggles. I couldn't do anything more. I wasn't willing to gamble another $20,000 away, and neither was my husband. And we were like, well, what do we do? And I said, you know what? I got to do something. I got to put my energy somewhere. So I went to helping others. And that was just because that's what I'm naturally inclined to do. And so, being pulled into that, though, I will say there's a level of empowerment that comes from that. Because when you are truly helpless to help yourself, and you turn around and you go and help others who are in similar circumstances, you do feel like you gain a little bit of power back.
I would agree, and I think it's a delicate balance in that state. I mean, there's one part of me that would almost be quick to say, "Well, no, you gotta put your mask on first and make sure you're good," but I do understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. I do feel that there are times when that is a really great thing to do, but I think the important thing is to learn when that shifts, and to probably give yourself the time, because it could almost be a mechanism to hide from that pain. And that's where it gets tricky, right?
Yeah.
Because you do it, and then if you do it for too long, you're just hiding from the pain. So I always say it's not what you do, it's the why you do it that matters, right? And I think that during during the process of grief, we have to really check in with ourselves, why we're doing this, how long we should do this, and then because it's a hard thing to sit with the pain. It really is. I mean, I force myself still to sit with pain of some things, but it's like, for me now, I realize it's like ripping off a Band-Aid, that
Mm.
the more I avoid it, the worse it gets. But if I just sit with the grief and just cry it out and scream or whatever I want to do, I feel like it gets a lot better faster. And that's just my process. I'm not saying that it works that way for everyone, but it just works that way for me.
Yes. Well, actually, and I do want to say to that, I am fully invested in emotional pain and saturating myself in it, allowing that to seep through me and process it. I actually tell people all the time, lean into the pain, lean into the
Mhm.
discomfort, because the thing you'll find at the other side of it you won't lose yourself to the pain. I promise you, you will fully immerse yourself in that pain, and you will find a well of beauty at the bottom, and you will actually be able to rise back up with those golden nuggets of beauty along with you. One of the things that I had happened once was somebody had called into a show I was on, and I was talking about grief and loss, and she said if she's afraid that if she remembers the people she's loved and lost, that she will just start crying and she will never stop. I know that fear. Here's the
Mm.
thing, though. Is it a truly rational fear? Do you really, truly believe you'll keep crying and never stop? Fear is always magnified. When we look at things through the lens of fear, fear will always blow things out of proportion. Same thing happens as a parent. Fear, when you're fearful for your children, fear will always blow things out of proportion. Fear is not rational.
Mm-mm.
So once you actually go for it, take the leap, jump into the pain. And I told her this, jump into that well, that ocean of tears, because I promise you, you will find the Atlantis of the beautiful memories of your loved ones at the other side.
I
And
love
that's what you will be able to retrieve and take with you as you move forward in life. Because
that.
that's what I've done.
Yeah.
My parents have been gone. So my father passed away October of 2011.
Hmm.
So it's going to be almost 13 years now. And my mother passed away August of 2015. So it's going to be almost 9 years now. I don't
Hmm.
feel that that time frame is actually accurate in my living. And that's
So it
because
feels longer, shorter.
shorter. And that's
Mm.
because when you
Interesting.
have a really intense emotional struggle, I actually believe that that thing that happens to you, it actually pulls itself out of your linear time frame. So I mean, honestly, atomic time, that's an actual human construct. But
Right.
what's interesting is the chronology of your life, the way it lives. When you have an excessively emotional experience, something
Mhm.
that just triggers the deepest emotions in you, it almost takes root into this own little bubble that is crafted outside of that time frame. And some days it feels like ages ago, and other days it feels like it just happened yesterday. And that's okay.
That's an interesting way to put it. I would say that I would agree that that is true. And when I met you, it's been a little over a year now. I had just lost my mom, so I was in the middle of it. So that was probably, I mean, your talk was very inspiring anyway, but it was really emotional for me just because I had just experienced that, and it was the only death of somebody close to me that I'd ever had experienced. But you're so right. I mean, I think at the other end of it, you do find these golden nuggets of beauty if you just allow yourself to feel it and grieve in it. And it's just part of a process. And I think that if we I always say fear is like facing that monster under the bed. You know, like when you're a little kid, you just think there's a monster under the bed and you're like afraid to look under the bed because you don't know what that monster is going to be like. But the minute you look under the bed with a flashlight and you realize that the monster is just a wad of socks or something stupid, it's amazing how that feels. So that's what I always tell people. I go, fear, it's just like staring down the monster under your bed. It really wasn't even there. Just put a light under there and you're like, oh yeah, that was nothing. And let's move on. We always think it's going to be so much worse than it actually is. And I can tell you in every part of my life, and I've faced so many situations in my life. I mean, leaving medicine, I was afraid. Moving to California, I was afraid. I mean, I think it's a normal part of the process. It's just how long are you going to spend there is the important thing. You know, I just
Mhm.
chose to feel a little bit of the fear because it's natural and there's a reason for it. And then I chose to move on and trust my gut, trust my intuition, and do what I knew I needed to do. And it has served me very, very well because I think what happens to some people is they get locked into that fear response, then they get stuck there and they cannot get out. So, I'd love to hear what you have to say about like what your thoughts are about getting out of this fear construct. I mean, especially more
Yeah.
related into, I would say, with parenthood or with grief and loss, whatever you feel called to do. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to tell the audience any specific pearls of wisdom that you have on those two topics.
Okay. So interestingly, parents are always having a bit of fear stuck inside them. what if this happens to my child? What if this happens? What if this happens? But the reality is, if you place yourself in the present moment, what you're actually doing is you're foreshadowing, you're prophesizing what could happen, what could happen. You're constantly going in this place of like worst case scenario. And in fact, oftentimes that becomes a very much a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I tell parents that I think that the best thing you could do is honor yourself with the understanding that you want to arm yourself with the knowledge, but don't arm the fear as well. You want to eliminate the fear monster, because the truth is that there's no armor that comes with fear. It's actually just a mechanism that was created for us as part of our survival instinct. But the truth is, if you give it the honest, bold truth, you can usually recognize that this is just a what if and not likely to be a possibility. In fact, assume you and your child, or you and your children, are the rule, not the exception to the rule. You see, oftentimes we think, well, if I get that thing for my child, what if this happens? Oh my gosh, that's going to be terrible. You know, and then what am I going to do? I'm never going to be able to live with myself. But if you look at it from a statistical standpoint, that thing, probably there's like a 1.001 chance that there's going to be a problem. So usually we're not the exceptions to the rule. We're usually a part of the rule. And it's really important to focus on parenting and fear, to understand that the worst thing you can do is fear parent for your children, because what you do is you completely dissolve their ability to learn how to do for themselves and to learn what they need to protect themselves. Because, and I know I'm going to get a lot of people angry with me when I say this, but it's okay. As a parent, it is not your job to protect your children. It is your job to teach them the tools they need to protect themselves. That way, when you're gone, they can continue doing so. And yeah, so that's one thing
Oh,
with
no,
my
no.
parents.
I love what you just said, and that's why I
Yeah,
wanted to come in here and
yeah.
just tell you how much I love that, because I have to tell you that, even though I parented my children many years ago, I got a lot of pushback about this
Mhm.
because my goal was to make myself irrelevant. That was my goal, make myself irrelevant. So now Dr. Shafali shows up, so she says the same thing. I'm like, but I thought that 20 years ago. And everybody thought I was crazy. But I did not feel, I saw parenting. I tend to see a lot of things in a very different way than most people do. But even in those times where I was raising my children, part of it was out of necessity because I didn't have the time to coddle them and make their lunches and, do all the things. They had to learn how to do it because we were just busy. So, but I never felt that I was doing my child a service by showing them that they need me all the time.
Yes. Now,
And
and it is
I still
important.
don't want that.
Well, here's the thing though. It's important to teach your child how to ask for help when they need help, but
100.
not ask for mommy or ask for daddy when you need help.
Right.
Because there's a distinction there, right? You're teaching them that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to speak up and to especially you have to help them in the emotional processing. You have to teach them the tools they need to learn how to process their emotions. So it starts when they're really young, before they're verbal, by giving them the words they need to identify their emotions and what they're feeling, and then being able to identify other people's emotions. That's the social part of social emotional development.
Mhm.
And then being able to not just splatter their emotions everywhere, but learn coping mechanisms that work for them specifically, which change over time, because the only two things we can guarantee in life are change and death. Those are the only two guarantees in life,
And
okay?
they threw
Not
in
even
stuff on
taxes at this point.
taxes, right. I know, I'm like, "What on earth? That's
Not
just
even
silly."
taxes, not for
Yeah,
some
I
people
agree. I
anyway.
think it's I agree with you with the
Death
change as
and
well.
change.
And
Change.
it really is so important to equip our children with emotional availability and just for them to understand what's going on. So, yeah, I think these are huge skills that we really owe it to ourselves and our children to teach them, for sure.
Which means that instead of telling someone, it's okay, you're fine, no, don't do that.
Right.
You don't get to tell them when they're fine or when they're not. They
Right.
need to be able to identify that.
Oh, I
They need
totally
to be
agree with
able to
that.
tell you how they feel, and this goes the same thing for relationships. You need to be able to say how you feel about what you're feeling, and then you need to be able to have coping mechanisms and strategies to handle those feelings and to process them healthy, and
Oh,
then move forward. It's
those are
not
great
about not
words.
feeling your feelings. It's not about that. But it's also not about splattering your feelings all over the place, because I see that happening these days too.
Oh, 100%,
You
100%.
made me feel this way. You
Right.
know what? If somebody said something, what you're reacting to, or they've done something, what you're reacting to is the circumstances, right?
Right.
You said this thing and I felt this way when you said those words. Not you made me angry at you. No,
Right.
there's a distinction there, and that is really vital. I'm really upset because you said this. I'm really upset because you threw this, or you did this, or you did, I'm feeling upset about this thing,
Right.
not you, this thing that
I
occurred,
know.
the thing that occurred, even
Well, I
if
have
they
to
were the
say
one who
this
did
is
it.
I think that our audience will definitely chew on this for a while. I'd love to keep going, but we're almost out of time. And I just wanted to tell everybody that your website is at the bottom there. So if they want to reach out to you, they can reach out to you on your website and check it out. And I think they can contact you from there as well. But this was just such an insightful conversation. It was such a pleasure having you on the show today. And I'm so glad that you worked out with your husband and your son got to bed on time and everything so that you could join us today. And I'd really love to have you on again at some point and talk about some of the other things you do. Today was strictly parenting, which personally I was kind of really wanting to get into that topic, so probably how it got there. But again, we'll have you back another time. Thank you so much for joining us on this Easter Sunday and a holiday weekend.
Thank you, my dear. It was lovely being here with you. Really
Well,
enjoyed
thank
it.
you so much. We'll see you again on the show, and thanks for joining us on Gloves Off. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today on Easter Sunday for Gloves Off. I just love this is the highlight of my week doing this show. So I just want to thank everybody for watching, and please tune in next week for Doug Benefield. We'll be talking to him, deep diving into his story, and we're just going to prove that not all accountants are the same. I mean, I think there's so many stereotypes out there in the world, and we need to start abolishing them. So anyway, stay tuned, and we will see you guys next week on Gloves Off.